Farm Bureau helps protect its members in more ways than you might think. They've always been the voice of agriculture in Arkansas, working on behalf of folks like me when nobody else would. And Farm Bureau stands for the values that Arkansas families care about. They've protected my right to farm and make a living, which helps everybody who likes food on the table. You know what they say, Arkansas counts on agriculture, and agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
And there's lots happening on the economic front in Arkansas, from unemployment to a lot of economic activity, particularly in Northwest Arkansas. Joining us now to talk business is Kathy Deck. She's the director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas's Walton College of Business. She has the longest title of any person in the state of Arkansas, but we are always glad to sit down and visit with her. Kathy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Roby.
Let's start first with unemployment in Arkansas. We have seen the state unemployment rate really not move too much in any particular direction for the last several months. It's either been unchanged or it moves maybe 0.1% one way or the other. What we have seen, though, in particularly the last numbers that came out, is that Arkansas's unemployment rate is now higher than the national unemployment rate for the first time since before the recession. Not necessarily a good trend, is it?
It's really not good at all. One of the things that we've seen happening in the state is that while metropolitan unemployment seems to be improving a little bit, the metropolitan labor forces are beginning to grow just a little bit. When you look at parts of the state that are not in those metropolitan areas, what you find is that they haven't experienced anything that even remotely resembles a recovery. And so they've seen continued job loss even after what we call the national recovery in 2009 and beyond was well underway. The more rural areas of Arkansas really have not experienced that at all. And because, of course, so much of our state is rural, that shows up in the state numbers.
Well, there doesn't seem to necessarily be a great state strategy or even local strategies for dealing with that type of rural unemployment. I mean, from what we've seen in the census data over the last couple of years, I mean, this is a trend that is going to be very difficult to reverse.
It's a very difficult problem, of course, because all of the communities are interested in educating their populations and making sure that their labor forces are as skilled as possible so that they can go after those very difficult to find projects and bring employers into their communities. But the competition is so very fierce, and these communities find themselves at such a disadvantage to some of the metro areas throughout the country and throughout the world that have huge stocks of labor force that are very educated, that it really is a challenging problem that is just going to require every leader to not stop in their quest for bringing jobs and opportunity to the rural parts of the state.
Let's talk about one of the metropolitan areas that you're very familiar with, and that is up in Northwest Arkansas. You were the director of a report that came out this week on behalf of the Northwest Arkansas Council, dealing with some things that are happening up in Northwest Arkansas. I think the first thing that kind of jumps out to me in that report is how strong the housing rebound has been up in Northwest Arkansas. Speak to me about why that is so important and how come there is so much of a ripple effect when housing starts to do better.
Well, the housing market really has improved enormously in Northwest Arkansas, particularly when you compare it to a year or two ago. We go back and we look at the boom of the boom, as I like to call it, back in 2004 and 2005, and we see that, of course, we're not seeing anything like the level of construction activity that we were back then. We don't see anything like the level of churn in the markets, but we have seen a significant uptick and a significant rebounding of prices, in fact, since the bottom of the recession, since we were in such an oversupply situation and demand was so muted.
And some of those homes that are moving now too are not necessarily the cheapest homes in the market either. We're seeing some bigger dollar average prices in that housing. That bodes well too for some inventory moving, doesn't it?
It does bode well when we see average prices go up. And, we've been looking at which houses are selling for a while. And one of the things that we've noticed is that, of course, the most credit-worthy borrowers have been the ones to get back into the market the soonest. And they also tend to be the ones who buy the most expensive houses. And so I think that credit-worthiness piece is still at play. We still see people who have wherewithal being the ones who are really driving this market back to health.
Let's come back to employment and unemployment up in Northwest Arkansas. You noted in the report that we're talking about here that employment actually has grown about 3% from 2011 to 2012. And you put this in the context of how Northwest Arkansas compares to some peer regions as well as the state and the nation. About 9,000 local jobs in 2012 was the job growth there. This 3% growth rate, though, is that really that good, or is it just good compared to the news that we've been seeing in recent years?
No, it's really that good. As a matter of fact, 3%, 4%, 5%, which are numbers that we've been seeing here in 2013, as well as those numbers in 2012, that is just a spectacularly booming employment growth situation. And I think that if Northwest Arkansas could maintain, say, a 3% growth rate for the foreseeable future, that would really set us up for a very, very kind of sustainable kind of growth, a place where there would be plenty of development in terms of retail and commercial space, a place where there would be plenty of opportunity for our sectors to develop.
When you look at the growth rate that we're talking about in employment, can you tell me what sectors seem to be thriving the most? I would obviously think that trucking, transportation, obviously trade, with Walmart being such a pivotal part of the economy up there. But what are the sectors where you're seeing this really strong growth? What's really driving it?
Well, one of the really exciting things about the Northwest Arkansas employment situation is that it is so broad-based across sectors. And yes, trade, transportation, and utilities, where almost 1 out of every 4 employees in Northwest Arkansas is located, is doing very well. Without that, we wouldn't be seeing the kinds of levels that we are seeing. But we're also seeing those professional and business services grow. That's lawyers, accountants, and architects. We're seeing our leisure and hospitality sector grow. Those are primarily restaurant jobs, but we're seeing that go very quickly. Healthcare services, everything has been really clicking along, except with the possible exception of the manufacturing sector. Some it's not been nearly as strong, and then information has been a little bit on the flat side. So the media hasn't grown very quickly, but it's important to have our trade, transportation, and utility sector. That includes Walmart, that includes its suppliers, that includes J.B. Hunt and other logistics suppliers in the community. Obviously, when you think of Northwest Arkansas, that's our identity. And to have our key sector like that just doing so well means that we are likely to see all of our sectors hitting together. And that's really the situation we found ourselves in.
And I know from talking to some Northwest Arkansas business leaders, another place they would like to establish more of an identity is in startup businesses. Are you seeing anything that kind of indicates some strength in the startup category?
Well, what's really interesting about startup, when we look at new business establishment data, we look to see how we compare to our peers. And of course, we are seeing that we're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as new establishments go. We have a tremendously large infrastructure set up to support the entrepreneurship community, everything from commercialization of university ideas to those companies that do come out of Walmart and out of the retail sector. We see a lot of companies looking at Walmart as their biggest potential customer, and knowing that they're right here gives them a reason to be located in Northwest Arkansas.
All right, last question for you. I know that earpiece is giving you a little bit of grief there, but
bother me a little bit.
Let's take you out of Northwest Arkansas and pull you into North Central Arkansas. The Fayetteville shale play has been a boom area for several years for the whole state, and has helped raise the state's economy like a good tide there. But we've seen a dramatic slowdown in natural gas production in Arkansas. You've studied this a whole lot. What are you seeing in the numbers right now that is maybe either a positive or a negative, or pause for concern or pause for optimism?
Well, we have seen employment in the mining and logging sector, which is kind of the super sector around the oil and gas boom, declined by around 10% since its peak. Now, of course, a decline of 10% from the peak means that we're still way ahead of where we were at the beginning of the decade, because we do have a tremendously much larger amount of employment in the oil and gas sector than we did back even 10 years ago. But the slowdown has hit, and just like we get the good multipliers on the way up, you also see those multipliers on the way down. When we lose, say, 1,000 jobs in the mining and logging sector, that shows up in the construction sector, that shows up in the transportation sector as well. So the slowdown is evident in the employment numbers. we certainly have seen a dramatic decline in the amount of investment that is going forward in the Fayetteville Shale. And as you have to look at it from two perspectives. I think, first of all, you have to realize that there's been a great deal of activity and it doesn't just turn off. There's a lot of investment there. We have pipelines we didn't have before. We have gas being produced in quantities that we couldn't even imagine a few years ago. But at the same time, those communities that have been such happy recipients of the economic activity from the Fayetteville Shale have to continue doing those things that we talked about at the beginning of the show, and investing in their workforce and trying to figure out what comes next so that their community can continue to prosper.
All right, she is Kathy Deck. She's the director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. I did not even have to look at a note to get that title out there. Always good to have you with us, Kathy. Thank you.